what's up everybody? It's Mr. Pratt here, and this is River Crossing.
Yeah, we are in the place to be.
So as you know, I'm always bringing you accessible, modifiable, and engaging content for at home, in the gym, and in the classroom. River Crossing is my go-to team building and cooperation game. This is a great activity to do with students grade 3 and up, and it also works for team building events for staff. The basic premise of River Crossing is really simple. You're trying to get from point A to point B without touching the floor. So for students, I always like to tell them it's like the floor is lava. They all love that game and they know it well. So to set up River Crossing, the game works best in groups of 5 to 7 people. The more people you have, the more difficult it becomes to communicate with one another, so I wouldn't really go any higher than 7. So we'll dive right into it. Your basic setup for River Crossing is you're gonna mark point A. You can see back there with my red cones. And I'm trying to get to point B over there with my red cones. Now in the middle, you're gonna see some yellow cones. That's gonna be a safe zone, or kind of like a checkpoint, the halfway line. And I always like to put that for students as it helps promote success. Now, of course, for the purposes of my video, I've condensed the game a little bit. You can do this across a full gym, a full field, across your classroom, or whatever environment you have, and you can change the size and the distance that students have to go based on their abilities and their age and experience. So to set up River Crossing, all you're gonna need, other than these cones back here, are a couple simple items. I typically use 2 hula hoops and 1 or 2 spot markers. Spot marker is just a little circle or star that goes on the floor. You could replace those with just an 8 by 11 sheet of paper if you wanted. I also usually throw in a random item that students and teams are responsible for taking care of. It's something that they can't forget because it kind of fits into the story that I give them to start this game. So in this case, I've used my trusty friend Chuck the chicken as a food ration. So once each team or each group has their required equipment, the game can start. So for the purposes of my video, I've just set up the equipment for 1 team, and I'll be on a team by myself. But in an actual reality, you could have different sets of equipment for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 teams, however many you have. And they can all be working on this at the same time. So one thing to keep in mind with the equipment, these are the rules I go over at the start of the game. Number 1 is students at all times when they're crossing the ocean have to be inside one of their pieces of equipment or on top of one of their pieces of equipment. So if I have a hula hoop on the ground, I'm allowed to be inside it, so are multiple members of my group, but I am not allowed to step outside of this hula hoop or I would fall into the shark-infested waters. I can't touch the outside of the hula hoop with my hand or my foot, any part of my body. If you were using a spot marker, same rules apply. They can be on the spot marker, but if they step off, touch the ground off, they're in the ocean, they're toast. If they fall out, or if they touch the ground outside of their equipment, their whole group has to restart. Now this makes the game challenging, of course, but it also allows students to have tough conversations. One student might make a mistake and their whole group has to restart. They're gonna have to re-strategize and figure things out. It also allows for opportunities to talk about sharing the blame, working as a team, taking responsibility as a group, and not just kind of blaming one person for group mistakes. Now, to play the actual game, we would obviously start from the red line, point A, trying to get to point B. In the middle, between the yellow cones back there, that's like what we said was the safe zone. So I pretend in this case, if we were crossing a shark-infested ocean, maybe that's a sandbar. It's a place where they can kind of rest, regroup, have a little bite of their Chuck the chicken, get some energy to make it to the second half. This allows students to feel success even if they don't make it the whole way. It also is a place where they can restart when they're on the second half of the course. So if they've made it past the first half of the ocean and they make it to the sandbar, if they fail on the second half, they just restart at the center sandbar there. Now, in this case, I have 2 hula hoops and 1 spot marker. I said you could do this with up to groups of 7. I'd just consider adding in another spot marker or maybe a bigger hula hoop for your second hula hoop. If your groups are about 5 or 6 people, 3 items seems to be the magic number. one big, one medium, one small. Now once students get going, they're going to kind of figure out a pattern that works for them. So the basic premise of river crossing is they're going to end up kind of using their equipment and trying to get some kind of pattern that's going to help them. So whether they put down a spot marker, step on the spot marker, and the first person knows and lays everything out, and they have people following along behind them, and they all move up to the front hula hoop, and then start passing objects from the front to the back. That's one strategy. It's probably the most common strategy. There's also other ways to do this. You could have one or two students just use all three of the pieces of equipment for just themselves, get to center, toss it back to their group mates, and their group mates could have to cross then. But keep in mind, if they try that strategy, if anybody fails on the first section of the course, they do all have to restart, regardless of if they've made it to the sandbar or not, because their group is not safe until everybody has made it to that center checkpoint. So just to give you a bit more clarification, I'll quickly show you what this would look like on the real course back down. So half the fun of river crossing is creating some sort of backstory to the game. I always kind of make something up as I go to help keep my students engaged and excited about the activity. So I've had students pretend that they've crashed their helicopter and landed, and they have to cross a lava field to get back to civilization. That's why they have to use their equipment as lava-proof rafts. In this case, I've pretended that students were on a Caribbean cruise and the Kraken has come up and destroyed their ship, so now they have to get from a deserted island. They've swam their way to a deserted island to safety, but now they have to make their way across shark-infested waters to civilization to find rescue. And in this case, their random item, which is Chuck the Chicken, is their food ration. So these are just fun things that kind of get students engaged and excited about the activity. Now, a couple things I found helpful over the years of playing this. Keep in mind there's some things you're not going to allow students to do. They will get creative and they will try this after a while. There's always one or two that kind of figure it out. But I'm technically inside my hula hoop right now. Okay, I'm not allowed to walk around the ocean like this. And I also don't let students shuffle their hula hoops. Okay, because then they're just going to shuffle and go all the way across the ocean, all right? Some things I have seen students do is step on their food ration. I usually allow that. You can allow what you see fit in your context. Now, when students make it to the first side, which they're gonna do fairly quickly after they've done this once or twice, I start to add in more challenges. You can add to your backstory saying they've read their map wrong and they've ended up at the wrong island and they gotta try again. They gotta go back. But one of their teammates has broken their leg and one of them has been blinded by lava or whatever you want to make up. And in this case, students are going to have to make their way back with one student hopping on one foot and another student with no vision. So this is going to make it so students have to communicate and problem solve in a different way to go back. It's the same game, same premise, but adding in a little modification, changing it up, keep it fresh, keep it challenging. When you add in things like injuries and stuff, it's nice to do that sometimes as well to the strong leader the first time. So you kind of force other people to take a leadership role. So if somebody is clearly the leader on the first successful trip across the ocean, maybe on the way back they're the ones who lose their vision. So they're not able to kind of lead as much, and it forces other people into that role. So it's a really great way to help students work on different group dynamics, accepting different roles within a group, and kind of demonstrating their strengths and weaknesses, all in a fun activity. Another way I've modified this before, after they've done it successfully, maybe twice, is on the third time they go back just for fun, I tell them to do it, but nobody's allowed to talk. This is going to have them working on nonverbal communication, kind of working on teamwork, and it's going to kind of level the playing field for everybody, so you can't just have one person barking orders and the other one's following. So that about does it for river crossing. I hope you enjoyed this video and find this activity one that's useful for you in your classroom, in the gym, or at home. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button down there and check out some more of my videos that focus on team building and other fun activities in the gym. Don't forget to sign up for notifications so you can be the first to see my weekly content, and feel free to like, comment on, and share this video with your friends and colleagues. But for now, this is Mr. Pratt signing off from River Crossing.